Welcome back to the Veracity. This is Jim, host of Jim's Veracity. I am accompanied by my good friend Barry. Welcome back,
Hello.
Barry. And we have a special guest with us. His name is Dusty. You can find him on
Dusty lost 300 pounds.
Yeah, so welcome to the Veracity, Dusty. So you have lost a significant amount of weight, and I found you on Instagram. I've watched a couple of your YouTube videos, and I have been absolutely impressed with what you've done. I wanted to invite you here on the Veracity to talk a little bit more to the viewers about kind of your journey. What was it that you've ultimately accomplished?
Yeah, so I started my journey at 534 pounds, and in about 2 to 2.5 years, I lost 317 pounds. And I'm about 3.5 years now, about a year and a half since losing pretty much all the weight. And I've been able to maintain that weight loss and now work on body fat percentage and kind of taking this second stage of life as far as getting ready for what's next. And, you know, I guess to start off, just want to say thanks for having me on and allowing me to be here. And, you know, my story was really just living a life of limitations, of near-death experiences. And in that, I lost 317 pounds, and I kind of gained a whole new life, a new perspective, a new everything, to be honest. It kind of feels like I'm a year and a half into living life, like I've never lived it before. So I'm kind of in this area of discovering new things, experiencing new things, processing things in a new way. And so my kind of my big story that I've been sharing on Instagram and on YouTube is just sharing my journey in the past 3.5 years of losing the weight, but also discovering and learning new things along the way.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, man. What did you do? How did you lose the weight?
So in July of 2016, I had the gastric bypass surgery at 534 pounds. After about 6 months to a year, I was able to get a little bit more mobile. So I was able to get a little bit more physically active. So I switched to a kind of a low carb, high protein diet. And pretty much about 3.5 years now into the journey, I've pretty much done a high protein, low carb, kind of watching my intake of sugar, overall monitoring and having a balance as far as my intake of food. At this point, I'm now working out 6 days a week for about 90 minutes. To start, I pretty much just started by walking. I didn't do anything extreme because my whole life was going on extreme diets. So if there was an extreme diet, I went on it. And I had spent so many years. I mean, I started this when I was 32 years old. I spent pretty much my whole life going on any extreme diet there was, just to kind of get my hands around obesity, and I was never able to do that. So this time around, I knew that if I was going to take this step towards surgery, I knew that surgery wouldn't do anything about my food addiction. It wouldn't be able to control my diet or control my exercise regimen. So I knew that if I was going to take this step, I had to do something gradual enough that would stick over time and become a habit. So, you know, I just started by walking, just started by going around my apartments. And then when we moved around my kind of housing area, and I really didn't step into a gym until about 4 or 5 months in, just because I knew that if I went extreme, it wouldn't work like it hasn't worked the many times before.
You said you didn't step foot into a gym until about 4 months in. Was that planned? Were you like, all right, 4 months from now, I'm going to do this? Or was it just something you kind of woke up one day like, you know what, I'm ready for a gym?
It was planned, definitely planned. I knew that I had to deal with the addiction of food. I had to deal with how I coped with food. And a lot of that had to do with getting to a weight, freaking out that I'm at that weight, and then going on some extreme diet and trying to turn it around. So for me, I made the decision to wait on the gym because I wanted to prepare myself for the long term. If I'm looking at this journey on a long-term lifetime perspective, I've got to know that if I'm spending 4 months, 4 of the beginning months just walking relative to long-term, it's not going to seem like much. But really, I'm so grateful I just started small and gradual. Because walking over a 6 weeks time period, I got stronger, circulation, endurance was all better. And then that's when I started, stepping up my step goal, going around a little bit more of a distance walk, and just kind of gradually building it up. So 4 or 5 months going into the gym, that was a decision. Okay, feel like I've kind of gotten used to and made walking a habit, I can now take a step forward and go into the gym and just continue to still walk, but go it on a treadmill, maybe with some incline, something, again, a little bit more challenging than it was before, but gradually increasing. So that way I could get acclimated. I almost felt like a goldfish. Like, you don't just throw a goldfish in water. You have to have the bag kind of settle itself into the little tank. And then slowly, as it warms up, you release it. It really felt like that in the beginning of my journey.
Yeah, you definitely got to acclimate and kind of get yourself ready for it mentally. So you said you've been overweight essentially your whole life?
Yeah, my entire life. I was born 12 pounds. Thanks. Shout out to my mom out there, 12 pounds. C-section wasn't a natural birth.
Wow.
It was, I was born on Thanksgiving, actually, and nurses called me a butterball.
Nice.
I was a big baby. I was a big baby. And so every childhood picture that I have, I've got a stomach. Every photo that I have in my, little photo album as a kid, it's all of me big, overweight. That was my narrative since day one.
I'm sure there's listeners out there that kind of walk the same walk that you have, heavy their whole life. What point was the catalyst? Like, what was the tipping point?
I should have had many, many times before of little indications getting up to 534 pounds, having issues walking, not being able to do certain things. I mean, not being able to do something I like going on roller coasters or going kayaking. A lot of that stuff was kind of my whys, but it wasn't my breaking point. It was kind of something to where, I can't do that, but it's not extreme enough to where I just need to really turn things around. So for me, it was the last few months before I made the kind of the turnaround was I really had an issue with sleeping. My wife would actually have to wake me up in the middle of the night multiple times because I would be making this strange sound of me taking in air but slowly releasing it. So it's like my body was having a hard time naturally getting air. So it was trying to acclimate itself to try to get air. Yeah. So I was waking up in the middle of the night, probably 2 or 3 times a week, sitting over on the side of the bed and just catching my breath like I just went up a flight of stairs. I couldn't breathe. I just couldn't breathe. And, doing things I enjoy, like going to the beach. There's a real nice hiking spot in Pacifica, California. And about halfway from the parking lot to the beach, there's a rock. And I remember always having to sit on that rock bench before I could get to the beach because my lower back and I would be out of breath. I'd be sweating. I couldn't tie my shoes. I couldn't do normal everyday thing that everyone takes for granted. I just couldn't do those things. So it came to a point where I was on my way to an early death. I was on my way to not living anymore. And it just became enough. And it should have been enough a lot sooner than that. And that's one thing that I love encouraging to try to turn it around wherever you're at, because eventually the addiction to food, the yo-yo dieting that I went through, yo-yoed me up to 534 pounds where I was almost dead and maybe even practically dying because of the lack of oxygen, the lack of physical activity, lack of blood flow, a lack of a whole lot.
Yeah, it sounds like you might have had some sleep apnea, or at the beginning stages of it, at least. Yeah,
I'm sure I probably did. I never got diagnosed for it, but I'm almost positive I had that because my wife would tell me that I would stop breathing in the middle of the night multiple times, and she would have to listen for me to breathe. And then the times that she did hear me breathe, it was holding breath in and then slowly letting air out. So I definitely think it was an undiagnosed sleep apnea.
That's pretty scary to go through. I bet she was probably really scared for you there for a while.
She was very supportive and very by my side and loved me through and through. But she did mention multiple times, and I don't think I've mentioned that she was there along the way, but she was very concerned. And it's difficult talking to a loved one about making that drastic of a life change or being concerned about someone's health, especially in the family. I know that a lot of time people think that they can just openly make a public comment about someone's weight to try to encourage them to lose weight. But for the most part, discouragement or insults typically don't turn somebody around. It's usually the encouragement and the love of a close loved one. And I know that we had a few conversations where she was concerned for my health, concerned for the future of our family. And I had to start considering and taking that into account as far as making the decision. I'm practically dying. My wife, who I love, is very concerned about my future and my ability to carry on. So all of those were kind of thrown into that bucket of, I got to turn this around.
I was watching one of your videos, and what seemed like a pretty pivotal moment, you were being interviewed for a movie theater, and you'd mentioned in the video that you didn't know that video was going to be posted online. There was quite a few people that, at least you posted on there, that there's a lot of negative body shamers kind of commenting on your size.
Yeah, I was actually just watching that video today. I wanted to see if I can try to bring a contrast, because it does show a good viewpoint of where my weight was then. But I listened to the video today, and it reminded me that, it was part of a kind of a movie interview deal. And I got excited, actually, to be interviewed. I got excited that they pulled me aside and interviewed me about the movie and did this and that. So I was excited about it going in. And so my excitement, knowing that it was on YouTube, was genuine. I get to go to YouTube, and this is cool. I get to see my interview on YouTube. But then I scrolled down, and scrolling down was probably where things turned around, because I got the open, public comments of my weight and of my size. And it was less about the interview, less about the movie, but more about my weight. And I just, that was a real pivotal moment for me, because I didn't want that to be my story. I didn't want, the first thing people see is not, oh, what's his review of the movie? What does he think about this movie? And it's, no, he's fat, or wow, he's really overweight, or wow, it's nothing but big guys.
You could tell you were definitely really excited about doing the movie review. And, but when you posted those, I mean, you were talking through this interview and seeing the posts of the negative people coming out, and just, I've never had any negative. Hopefully I'll never have anything negative posted about me online. But to see that, like, perfect strangers, people you've never met before, just posting such negative vitriol.
It didn't change when I lost weight, because I did a Yahoo lifestyle article about my journey, and the yahoo.com article comments were actually worse than the YouTube video. And this was after I lost all the weight. But because they shared my story and how I lost the weight, a lot of people were stuck on the fact that I lost the weight, or thought I lost all the weight because of the surgery. And I think the surgery comes with stipulations that, if you have the surgery, you're going to lose all the weight. And there's a lot of misconceptions with the surgery out there.
No way.
It's a tool, but I mean, it doesn't address your food addiction. It doesn't build your diet, build your exercise program. It does none of that for you. It pretty much gives you a tool to turn things around. And so a lot of folks were turned off at the fact that Yahoo featured someone who had the weight loss surgery. And there were a lot of comments. I was beginning to respond at first and type back to a lot of folks, but I realized that, listen, I'm open to public opinion, because I'm putting this out on the public forum. So if someone has a comment or a misconception or an insult about my journey, hopefully it'll lead them to my Instagram, and hopefully they'll see that I'm simply just trying to provide hope, or the possibility that things can turn around, because the overwhelming darkness, the overwhelming impossibility of being at the weight that I was it's a desperation of just, I'm going to die. I'm going to die at this weight. So someone finds me on Instagram, gets a better idea of who I am and the positive message that I'm trying to portray. Great. If not, I can't. Yeah. I guess I can't do anything about it.
There's no easy way around it, man. Bariatric surgery is a tool, just like keto is a tool, just like carnivore diet is a tool. All of these things are tools, and they can be abused, and you can eat through a lap band just as easily as you can eat through a bad keto. It happens. It's not easy. Going through bariatric surgery, experiencing that, it's very, very hard. First of all, the setup for it. So you don't just walk into the doctor's office and they say, we deem you worthy of gastric bypass or lap band. That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. You go in there, you might become a candidate, right? You're looking at your insurance company has to get involved. They have to approve the surgery, and you have to lose a certain percentage of your body weight before they'll even deem you a worthy candidate. It can be a very lengthy process. So it sucks that after you lost some of that weight, when you started doing the surgery and you did the surgery and you lost the weight, that you wrote that article for Yahoo and you got all those negative comments. I think that those negative comments, I think those happen now, and it's unfortunate. But hopefully,
I still get them on my Instagram now. I typically try to post once a day, and there's still, outliers out there that will post negatively and stuff like that. And for the most part, I'll delete it just because it's not for me to entertain that. If it's someone's just trying to ruin your day, listen, they're out there, but it's still present today. And a lot of it is misconception. I know that people get very aggressive and say, oh, well, they're just ignorant. Like at the end of the day, I don't think it's ignorance. It's just there's probably not as much information out there. And a lot of folks on this side or on the other side of not having the surgery are often told it's the easy way, or it's the that listen, if you just have the surgery, then you're just going to get small. And that's what a lot of folks on who don't have it hear about it, like, oh, the surgery, it's just going to make your stomach small and then you're just going to get small. And there's a lot that goes into it, but I appreciate the folks talking about it. I'm glad that my story's out there, that I can talk about it, because I can talk to folks who are considering the surgery in the sense that, it's the last resort. It's the last thing on the table. It is the last thing that should ever be considered. Because it is surgery. There were a couple things that went along with my surgery. So I wasn't not just only having the weight loss surgery, but there were a couple things that my doctor was concerned about that was going to be checked while I was having the weight loss surgery. So I had been consulting with my doctor for a few months. I had been going on the different plans that they had put me on. And eventually it was a last resort for me. I look at it on this side and wonder, with the kind of mental transformation I've gone through, if I could have done away from the surgery. But you're talking, say, to a different person now, to the person who I was at 534 pounds, and at 534, grasping for air in the middle of the night, many instances where I think I'm going to die. This drowning impossibility just put me in a position where I felt like I needed to take that step. But I do see many people on social media that have lost as much weight as I have, or even more without the weight loss surgery. So it's definitely not a, hey, I'm overweight, go the weight loss surgery. You do everything but that. And it is the last resort. It is something that consultations with your doctor must have happened, weighing out all the pros and cons, weighing out everything that comes with it, because it's not the quick fix. It's not the stitch it up and you're good to go.
No, not at all, man. I mean, I watched one of your videos, and like I said, I've known a couple people that have had gastric bypass. It is not a quick recovery. It's a challenge. Even after the surgery, you have weeks of post-op that you have to endure. You don't just coming out of there, folks, ready to just eat whatever you want, and you're just going to lose all this weight. No. You have to follow a very strict regimen, and you can easily undo gastric surgeries just as quick as you can stop doing a keto diet. There's a lot there. So in one of your videos, you talked about mental health and how important it is. And you really got to work. I mean, you really got to work on your mental health, especially when you're going to be going through a weight loss program. And like you had talked about, going on the walks, talking about, and you're doing this envisioning, and you're basically giving yourself that self-therapy, right? And, one of your videos that I found very interesting is you talked about The Biggest Loser, how they basically take like a 6, 7, 8 month transformation and they squash it down to like an 18-hour video fest. And it just all of a sudden, that type of thing, how bad that is for society, how they see stuff like that. And all of a sudden they think like, oh my gosh, I got to go on this crash diet. And I share that because I've realized that I have all my life, in a way, been programmed to think a certain way, and I think part of that programming
led to me gaining some weight and gaining a lot of my weight. So, if I'm walking into a store and what's highlighted is the protein aspect of a particular drink or a particular mix, protein pancakes, I'm immediately going to think, hey, I need a high protein diet, protein pancakes. Hey, I'm going to have that. Yeah. And I'm programmed and I'm seeing that. But then I'm not reading the label and I'm missing the fact that there's a high amount of sugar and a high amount of carbs. Oh, yeah. Yes, there's a high amount of protein, but you're going to get a whole bunch of carbs and sugars as well. So I'm programmed to walk in and see protein pancakes, take that home and think that I'm on this, successful plan. Yeah. In the same way, I'm watching this TV show thinking, wow, I'm going to be able to turn things around with just a short little bit of dedication. Things are going to change. I'm going to be under the lights. There's going to be confetti everywhere when I lose weight. My family's going to be around me. And again, in the back, I would say mentally or in the back of my mind, I'm being slowly programmed that if I want to lose weight, it can be done quick. It can be done fast. It can be done instant. And then I just need to take these certain products, or I just need to focus on these certain products to make it happen. And I had to have that conversation. I had to make that video because it allowed me to also self-reflect that, man, mentally, a lot of these TV shows were saying, hey, it's going to be quick for your transformation. If you just focus on, say, this amount of time, you're going to be at this amazing spot in your life of losing all the weight. And it just fundamentally wasn't true. The extreme diets I've tried my whole life and they never worked. The one that works and the one that got me here today was something that I gradually over time let develop and change me. And it was approaching the step-by-step approach rather than, it's something to where if you're taking big strides, oftentimes they're so big that you're going to want to quit or abandon ship on that particular plan. But if you're taking these small gradual steps over time, your body or your mind's not going to really notice it. So you can develop into kind of the new you. So I've really seen a lot of the programming issues with getting me to where I got, like, products on the store shelves that highlighted something that I was looking for, but that also kind of had stuff that I wasn't thinking about, and, talking about mental health, not thinking about, watching these shows where it shows 18 hours over the span of an entire season, someone transforming their bodies, which in reality took 6 to 9 months. In the back of my mind, I'm not realizing that, but what I'm seeing is like, wow, huge transformation in this episode to this episode, this huge change happened. Wow, if I just spend a week or 2 weeks doing that same thing, I'm going to see this huge transformation. And it just fundamentally what led to my yo-yo dieting up to 534 pounds. I yo-yoed. Extreme, went off, ate whatever I wanted, binged, extreme, and then I went through that cycle again and again until it got me up to the highest weight.
I read a really good book, Atomic Habits by James Clear. He talks about basically you want to do activities that put a check mark into the bracket of the type of person you want to become. And at the end of the day, you want to be able to tally those brackets. And if you have more check marks in the column of the person you want to become versus the person that you don't want to become, you're winning, right? And if you compound that over a period of time, you're going to ultimately become that individual. It might take a lot longer if you're putting dang near equal check marks in each box, but the idea is you start thinking of your day like that, and then it starts to put things into perspective that, it's going to take some time, but if you're doing the right things on a daily basis over time, they manifest into great accomplishments, such as the accomplishments that you've done. I mean, 534 pounds, lost 317. You did not do that in 8 months.
Yeah, versus that yo-yo dieting.
That took a lot of time, man. I mean, that was crazy. That's amazing that type of a transformation, because there's so many people out there that would have, they would have went from 534 pounds and they would have weighed down to 350 pounds, right? And they would have, oh man, I'm successful. I can go back to where I was eating at before. But you took it to the next level. You took it to the level of, I need to identify what is it about my relationships that isn't working or hasn't worked, and I need to fix those. So
Yeah.
that's pretty admirable that you had the mental fortitude to be able to do that, man. Not a lot of people have that.
There's a threshold for sure that I reached many times, because I went on moments where I lost 75 pounds at one point, 60 pounds. I think I lost 95 pounds at one point. And there's like this threshold where, wow, I've done really well. And I let up the gas, and I let up, and then I slowly, gradually let old things back in and gain the weight back again. So there was definitely that moment for me. And I think what really changed it is that small step approach, because I was now, say at that threshold point where I could just count my accomplishments and just kind of settle down and turn this off and go back to how I was. But because it was so habits and routine and part of what I'm doing every day, it would almost be weird for me to stop doing what I have been doing for the length of, say a year, 2 years. I'd been doing the same thing for a year or 2 years. So, I mean, why am I going to change what's worked? And so this, a lot of the reason why that threshold was crossed of me actually getting to my goal weight, getting to a lower body fat percentage, is that I just simply stayed the course. I just stayed consistent. I just kept doing the same things that I had been doing. And I eventually, over time, it came off. I'm sad that I started sharing my journey towards the very end and not completely during. I respect a lot of people that I see on Instagram that are sharing the in-between, because that's something I wish I would have done. But, a lot of people see my before and afters, but don't realize that it took quite a amount of time. It took, I can't even say quite a amount of time. It took a bit of time, a bit of time for me to get there, and it wasn't overnight. So it definitely took time, and a lot of patience, a lot of consistency, a lot of just keep doing it.
Taking a step back, let's say we have a listener right now that's 400 or 500 pounds, and they're weighing this option of bariatric surgery. They're looking at they're making a hard look at themselves, not necessarily bariatric surgery, but anything. What would be your piece of advice for them?
Biggest piece of advice I would give is, are you ready to learn from everything that hasn't worked before, and what's different about what you're going to do now versus all the other failed attempts before? Because, somebody's up to 400 to 500 pounds. There's probably multiple failed attempts along the way to get up to that weight. So what's the difference now? Because the surgery isn't going to change your food addiction. It does not pull that addiction out of your stomach or do anything with it. It doesn't do anything about you not wanting to exercise or go to the gym or go for a walk. It doesn't do anything about the food choices, what's in your cabinet, what you enjoy. It's going to do nothing about that. It is simply going to provide you a tool. So what's the difference? What's the change that's going to take place just because of the surgery that's going to turn this around? I would really do some pre-thinking about that. I would really encourage the person to have a lot of those talks, those walks, those mental kind of check-ins before thinking about any kind of bariatric surgery, and really making a commitment to say that this time this time I'm gonna stick with it, and this time I might slip up. I'm going to take 15 steps forward, but if I take 3 steps back, if I slip up 3 times, I'm still positive 12 steps. So I'm okay with taking a couple steps back because I'm still taking 15 steps forward. So are you okay with messing up? The old me wants me back. The old me wants to be comfortable and be stagnant, but the new me gets up every morning, looks the old me in the face and says, not today. And I've just simply said not today for 3.5 years, and I continue to plan to say not today for the rest of my life. Yeah, not today, cheesecake. Not today.
Not today, cheesecake. So the one thing that I found interesting, you mentioned in one of your YouTube videos, is you should definitely get rid of your trigger foods.
Oh yeah,
clear those things out of there. So
trigger foods, because you're like, a lot of the success of my journey and a lot of journeys that I've seen is planning. So, you're not just going to go into building a house without blueprints, without plans. There's some construction near my house that they're building an extension of the freeway. they're not just grabbing some wood and some cement and hey, we'll put this here and just see if it works.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of pre-planning going on, and a lot of the success of the weight loss journey is pre-planning. So if you know that you struggle in a particular area of binging or grabbing a potato chip and then going into 400 potato chips before you're done, if you want to be successful to start with, get rid of those things out of the house. Communicate with those people in your household that you are going on a particular health journey and that you want to be successful. And there are things that they can do to help along the way that would help kind of turn things around. So one of the things that my wife did is that she made sure that any kind of trigger foods, any kind of trigger items were not in the house. And she respected the things that I struggled with. So, I really loved pizza. I really loved a lot of the carbs and a lot of the high carb items. And so a lot of that stuff was just taken out of the house. So when I was tempted or I had some sort of pull towards binging or something like that, I would now go towards my go-to snacks, which, I've got 3 go-to snacks now that are always in the house in case I have a snack kind of themed, which is string cheese, which is high protein, low carb, almonds, same thing, high protein, low carbs, and pork rinds. And so those 3 things I'm going to go to, and I don't have the trigger foods in the house. I don't have those things that are going to pull me in. So it's really planning ahead. If you're at the house taking the trigger foods out, if you know that fast food is your thing, fast food is the place that you're going to stop, then figure out a way to go to fast food, but keep it high protein and low carb. If you're going to get the chicken sandwich, take the bread out, take the sauce out and have the chicken itself with a tomato. I mean, there you go. You're getting the taste of a chicken sandwich, but you're just not carving it up with the bun. So a lot of that pre-planning really, really helps and I guess encourages the success.
Yeah, the planning is important. I read a really good book one time, because you mentioned triggers, and that just gets me thinking, man. This book was about habits, and I brought it up with Crystal a little bit. So habit cues, our brain is constantly scanning our environment for cues that it gets triggered, and all of a sudden it has this pathway that's established, right? So if it's something we've had before and our brain liked it, all of a sudden we make this quick neural connection between seeing a bag of potato chips and the sensation of the crunch and the bite and all of that. It creates a quick neural connection, and it's important to get those trigger foods out of there, man, because it's going to stimulate that pathway in the brain that is going to just automatically you get to a point where you can look at a bag of chips and you have a flush of dopamine in your brain, and you already feel good just by looking at it because you already anticipate you're going to take a bite of it.
Yeah, the potato chips were easy for me. Getting into some Doritos or any other brand of potato chips, digging in, a good alternative for me was pork rinds. It's still the same crunch. It's still the same kind of crispiness, but it's, a high protein, low carb alternative. So sometimes it's finding an alternative that's not as bad.
I had to laugh, Dusty. You called yourself a serial offender of Pringles.
Oh yes. It was, they knew me. They knew me there in the local store. More Pringles. Actually, the folks over at the fast food joints knew me a lot more than the grocery store folks. I
bet they miss you a lot.
Yeah, they sure do. They miss my bank account too.
I bet they miss your money. Absolutely.
I know the surgery is supposed to be a last resort and whatnot, but I was curious, was there any other programs or books or anything that kind of helped?
I'm more of a podcast person.
Yeah.
I'm more of a I've got a lot of long trips in between my kind of job and I'm in the car a lot traveling. Yeah. So I like to pop open a podcast and listen. So I would say my books have been podcasts. Awesome. And I've listened to a lot of health conscious, like a lot of doctors, a lot of scientists, a lot of researchers, not only going into the weight loss kind of industry, but also exploring, mental and physical interactions with people, just kind of understanding the overall kind of, it's just knowledge, just learning. Podcasts were great because it's just a bunch of different individuals giving their take and me kind of absorbing that information and filtering it from there.
Yeah, podcasts they're getting really mainstream. They're getting really popular. Before I let you go, what's coming down the line for you? Like, what are some goals you have coming up?
Yeah, so going forward, I do have a considerable amount of skin left. So I've got about 7 to 10 pounds of skin. I've been working since day one to try to mitigate the look of it. A lot of people do ask if I still have the extra skin, and I treat that as a compliment because it doesn't look like I do, and that's what I've really been working on. So I do still want to get the skin surgery. I had a consultation done about a year and a half ago. The doctor looked at my skin, looked at kind of where I was, and estimated about 7 to 10 pounds of skin. And it's pretty much just kind of this layer of skin that goes from my chest all the way down to my midsection. So they're going to have to do quite a bit of removing of skin. So that's going to be kind of the next step. I don't know when that'll happen, just because it beyond my insurance company, I think it's going to be about $20,000 for me to come up with. So planning on that or hoping for that is one thing I'd like to do. And then I'm really looking for something to challenge me, and I don't know what that is. Again, I'm kind of new into this new me thing, so I want to challenge myself. I want that underestimated feeling to come from something of, you can't do a triathlon, you can't do a Tough Mudder, you can't do this, you can't do that. I want to meet those kind of challenges head on. I'd like to say after the skin surgery, if it happens, I'd like to do one bodybuilding show, actually go through a typical bodybuilding workout regimen, the whole thing, and be on stage at least once and really show that contrast between my top weight and my stage weight. That's awesome. To kind of see what that big difference is. So going forward, it is super open. I'm kind of just sharing my journey and seeing what comes about. And I've met some great people along the way. I don't know what the next year, 2 years, or 5 year holds, but I'm excited because I can do a lot more now than I could not do, when I was over 500 pounds.
It sounds like you're getting. It sounds like you're living life, man. You're enjoying it.
Yeah, I'm finally being able to see and do things that I was very limited to do before. And my wife and I's anniversary trip this past summer to Mexico is a good indicator of that. We probably went on 7 or 8 different adventures, from parasailing to cliff jumping to cenote diving, just all this stuff that would never be possible over 500 pounds that is now possible. So it's exciting because it feels like I'm able to experience life and do things, and it makes me excited for the future as well. When my wife and I have kids, we can do these things with our kids, and we're not going to be limited.
Yeah, that's awesome. We should give a shout out to your wife as well, because talking with you, you mentioned that she's also had a pretty significant weight loss as well. Yes. Shout out to my gorgeous, beautiful, lovely, and can't do anything without. Can't do anything without you. But a lot of where I'm at is because of her amazing inspiration. So she's on Instagram as well, Rocky_RNY. So I share with her, or I share on my particular Instagram about her journey, and she's kind of on her way of sharing her own. She's got a whole different story. She's struggled with a hormonal issue with PCOS, with infertility. So her complete journey is different because it's approaching it from the sense of losing weight to have children, to have us start a family. And so there's a whole different kind of overcoming that she is working on and going through. So it's pretty remarkable seeing that firsthand, because I know that's what she saw me go through. So now me seeing her go through, it's pretty eye-opening, and it gives you a newfound respect for someone that you committed to. So to the podcast listeners, where all are you on social media?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram. That's pretty much my main location, Dusty_lost_300LBS. Dusty lost 300 pounds. And then a couple months ago, I put up a YouTube channel that allows me to expand longer thoughts. I was realizing that Instagram limits the amount of time that I can share in stories. And so the longer conversations that I like to have and kind of talking things out, I've on my YouTube, and that's also Dusty lost 300 pounds. But I think Instagram is pretty much my main place where I'm at. And there's a little link tree that kind of directs people over to my YouTube and in different places like that. So, if someone does reach out via Instagram, I'm pretty good at answering everybody back. I, at one point, was the guy reaching out, and I remember the guy's before and after picture. I believe I remember his name, how desperate I was for any information that he could give me to get over the hump. and I was so desperate, and I remember that feeling. So I oftentimes get messages like that where folks are just desperate. So I've tried to make it a point to answer any DMs that come across, just to see what I can do to convey hope. You know, I'm not a personal trainer or a health coach.
Yeah.
And what I've done is what I've done in my journey. And if there's tips that can help somebody else, great. But yeah, I'm mainly on Instagram, and I've just recently started a YouTube, and that's it for right now.
Awesome. Well, Dusty, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I would love to have you come back.
I would love to be back. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, folks. This has been the Veracity. Thank you very much for listening. Please head over to Instagram, like and follow Dusty, follow his journey, ask him all the questions you can. He is an amazing asset to have. Thank you. Take care.